Tonight, civilians in Israel and Gaza eagerly wait for the ceasefire to take hold as hostage family members prepare to reunite with those taken from them more than a year ago. And President Biden's farewell warning.
An oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy.
His message to Americans and his legacy leaving office. And faith in the face of deadly wildfires. CBN News rides along with an LAPD chaplain. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Last-second ceasefire disputes delay an Israeli cabinet vote. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
From Washington, I'm John Jessup. Well, tonight, Israel reschedules a vote to ratify the deal after accusing Hamas of backing out of parts of the agreement. Hamas, though, claims it remains committed.
The ceasefire deal aims to end 15 months of fighting following Hamas's attack that killed 1,200 and took nearly 200 hostages. Senior Washington correspondent Tara Merchner has been monitoring the story. Tara, emotions are running high.
Yes, they are, Jenna. And as of now, the deal is supposed to kick in this Sunday. And as you mentioned, there is still some confusion about this ceasefire agreement. Now, this morning, Netanyahu delayed cabinet approval, claiming Hamas had violated parts of this deal. It is in 3 phases. The first set to begin this Sunday, lasting 42 days, and including the release of 33 hostages, starting with women, children, and the elderly. It's expected to include 2 of the 7 Americans captured and believed to still be alive. President Biden and President-elect Trump have both taken credit for this agreement.
This is a moment of tremendous relief for Israelis and Palestinians alike. The daughter of one hostage spoke for many when she said, "I can't wait to see them come back to their families. I'm so desperate to see them." A mother of 5 displaced from Gaza City said simply, "We are being reborn." It's also a moment of historic possibility for the region and well beyond.
And in exchange for the hostages, hundreds of Palestinian prisoners would be freed. Israeli forces will pull back and more desperately needed aid will flow into Gaza. Negotiations for the rest of the deal will also begin during phase 1. Since the ceasefire was announced, more than 70 Palestinians have been killed in strikes across Gaza. Meanwhile, it is hoped the earlier objections from Netanyahu's government aren't enough to affect the outcome, but it's a reminder of just how fragile this agreement is. If for some reason it is not approved by the Israeli cabinet soon, it could delay the start of the ceasefire and the release of those hostages, John and Jenna.
All right, Tara Merchner reporting. Thank you so much, Tara. For more now, we turn to Dr. Glenn Dewar, professor of International Relations and chair of the Department of History and Government at Cedarville University. Dr. Dewar, thank you so much for joining us. So Israel blames the delayed vote on Hamas wanting last-minute changes. Hamas says that it's still committed to a ceasefire agreement. A 2-part question for you. What's the likelihood this ceasefire actually happens? And then secondly, what's really driving this delay?
I think the likelihood is really 50-50. A lot of people want an end to the conflict that's been going on for 15 months now, but there really need to be very good assurances to get there. As noted on the previous segment, this is a ceasefire agreement in 3 phases, the latter 2 of which have not been negotiated yet, so it is really challenging. From the perspective of the Israeli cabinet as well, this is a country that has a coalition government after every election, and it is difficult to keep various factions together. There are real challenges and disagreements within the Netanyahu government in terms of how many hostages to get back and how quickly. Of the estimated 95 or so hostages remaining, 60 are expected to be alive, and 33 of those, as noted on the segment, are expected to come back, mainly those over 50. And there are concerns about whether or not the remaining hostages can come back quickly and whether they'll be kept alive. That's a big issue.
Yeah, the deal could also mean the collapse of Netanyahu's majority coalition, where he'd have to cave to the demands of his conservative wing or rely on the opposition for a lifeline. So what are his options here, Glenn, as he also wants to avoid upsetting incoming President-elect Trump?
Yes, it's important to have Trump on board. Trump has been a very strong ally of Netanyahu. The two have been very, very close. And certainly they'll want to work together. The trick as well is laying the guns down. The Israeli Defense Forces will have to withdraw from the major urban centers, but not fully out of Gaza yet. But clearly, if there are security threats, the IDF is going to want to have access and quick so it can neutralize anything that can happen. Regarding phase 2, that negotiation will start on day 16 of the ceasefire, and so it assumes an initial back and forth, prisoner swap, all things go as normal. But as noted, there are real disagreements within cabinet as to the speed of this, and that will have an impact on whether or not we get to the phase 2 negotiations.
Real quickly here in just a few seconds, what's to prevent Iran from using the ceasefire as an opportunity to regroup or rearm Hamas in Gaza or Hezbollah in Lebanon?
It's a very important question because Iran has heinously funded money to Hamas and Hezbollah and to the Houthis, a range of different motley crew of terrorist organizations. And while the new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, is somewhat in the reformist camp, it's not as if he's been very, very nice to Israel. This is one of the dangers of a ceasefire, delaying tactics, which then could harm Israel in the long term. It's part of the consideration of the cabinet.
Dr. Glenn Dewar, we are out of time. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
Here in Washington, President Biden is closing his time in office with a warning for America about his greatest concerns.
And that's the dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few ultra-wealthy people. The dangerous consequences if their abuse of power is left unchecked. Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead.
In his farewell address to the nation, the president also warned against the rise of a technology industrial complex without free press or fact-checking.
Well, for more on the president's farewell address and political legacy, let's bring in CBN White House correspondent Kelly Wright. Kelly, so President Biden opened his farewell address with a little bit of a victory lap discussing the Israel-Hamas ceasefire agreement. What exactly did he say?
Well, he talked about the fact that he had worked on this since the month of May of last year. But all truth be told, he had been working on it for quite a while, since the inception of that attack that took place on October 7th, 2023. The president even traveling to Israel to visit with Bibi Netanyahu to discuss his support and America's support for Israel. And last night, he reiterated that support, stating that he also brought in the Trump administration to carry the deal through. And the White House still believes that, regardless of the fact that the Israeli people right now, or at least the government, has not fully signed on to the deal, the president believes that the deal will go through.
President Biden's message came with those two warnings for the American people. Kelly, break them down a little bit more for us.
So let's break it down. When he talked about oligarchy, he is talking about something that some people, his critics, have said that he actually created an oligarchy by giving so much deference to people like George Soros, who he actually commended with a medal. Then there's, of course, the fact that he's very apparently upset with the fact that the oligarchy, meaning that Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Jeff Bezos, they're all standing in line in support of the president-elect who will be sworn in on the 20th, on Monday, and the president voicing his concerns about that.
You know, Kelly, President Biden hailed his accomplishments last night and stated that his administration leaves America better for the future. I'm sure it's just like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so is legacy as it's perceived. How was that, or how is that being received?
Well, it's been received across circles throughout America that some critics are saying the president left America with 4 years of unmet expectations, that he did not fulfill his role of what he campaigned on, which was to become a president who would heal the soul of America. And if you look at the landscape of America right now, it's still very much broken with an economy that people are concerned with. They voted for President-elect Trump overwhelmingly in support of having a stronger economy, as well as having a stronger national defense. Many people look to what took place with Afghanistan, with that precipitous withdrawal that was marked by the deaths of 13 members of the U.S. military, and so many people left behind, including equipment. So because of that, a lot of people are looking at the president stating that he didn't fulfill his own destiny, even after serving for 50 years in public service. Yet, I must tell you that when I talk to some of the staffers who are not paid well, they're not heard that often, when you talk to them, you would expect them to feel somewhat beleaguered and dejected. Yet one that I spoke to said that she was very proud to have served within this administration, and so much so that she will take a sabbatical for 3 weeks and then return to Washington to seek more public service on Capitol Hill. So that speaks well of the future on both sides of the aisle, Democrat and Republican, even those coming out of the Biden administration, who hope that one day they'll look back and appreciate their time of service to America during this tumultuous Biden administration.
All right. Kelly Wright for us at the very chilly White House this evening. Kelly, thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Coming up, confirmation hearings continue on Capitol Hill. The latest round of nominees next. Welcome back. Speaker Mike Johnson is looking to fill yet another position in the chamber, a new House Chaplain. According to Punchbowl News, Johnson is working with the minority leader to replace the Reverend Margaret Kibben. Kibben, a former naval chaplain, was appointed by former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi back in 2020. Johnson's office confirmed the move with Religion News Service, but didn't explain why. Johnson launched the effort days after Kibben offered a prayer back on January 6th, asking God to help defend against, quote, the enemies within.
National reporter Jack Jenkins reported the story for Religion News Service, and he joins us now. Jack, welcome. So was it this prayer that led to Kibben's dismissal, or was there more bubbling beneath the surface here?
It's not exactly clear. Now, we did have that enemies within prayer, and another minor controversy actually dogged Johnson when he accepted his re-election as Speaker. He misattributed a prayer to Thomas Jefferson. He might have selected that prayer, but in our own reporting, we found out that Reverend Kibben actually gave him the attribution at the bottom of the prayer that read that it was connected, that Thomas Jefferson allegedly read it every day. Historians say that he did not. So there might have been multiple instances in which he was, perhaps not as excited about Reverend Kibben. I should also note that she made some headlines a couple years ago for asking God for forgiveness for lawmakers not reaching consensus on pandemic relief. So she hasn't been, she's been an outspoken chaplain during her time in Congress.
Kibben, as a Presbyterian, has a little bit of what you would describe as maybe a traditional chaplaincy background. Punchbowl News reports Speaker Johnson is considering a replacement who's maybe a little less traditional, Becky Tirabassi, a non-denominational Christian and co-pastor of Viewpoint Church in Newport Beach, Virginia. Jack, what can you tell us about her, and is her outlook maybe a little more in line with Speaker Johnson, who identifies as a Southern Baptist?
Right. I do think that there is a more natural pairing between those two. I should note Speaker Johnson's office was willing to confirm that they were, in fact, looking for a new chaplain. They did not answer my questions about Becky Tirabassi, but were they to consider her, she's an interesting choice. She actually has a house in D.C. as it is, called the Lead House, which she says functions as a place for Washington members of Congress to pray for revival in our nation. She also, while she actually tends to avoid explicit political topics in her podcasts and her, in her sermons, she has called for revival in the country, and she's described America as a country in decline and in trouble, and hopes that lawmakers would turn to God. Things that might not necessarily sit well with some of the Democratic members of the House. But I think there's lots of evidence to suggest that Speaker Johnson might agree with a lot of the theology that she's espoused.
Jack, so how does this process work? Does she have to go through, what kind of process does she have to go through? When could Kibbens step down? When could the replacement, be put in place?
So this turns out to be a more complicated question than you think. Reportedly, Johnson is working with Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries to develop a framework to select a new chaplain. The difficulty about delineating just exactly how they select a new chaplain turned out to be a point of controversy a few years ago when then Speaker Paul Ryan actually tried to replace a chaplain, asking for his resignation. The chaplain actually tendered his resignation and then found out that since in that instance, Congress actually voted the chaplain into office, that he could not just unilaterally be fired. And so he was reinstated as chaplain very quickly. So it remains to be seen what sort of rubric Minority Leader Jeffries and Speaker Johnson end up developing to decide who the new speaker would be. My guess is that they would lean on consensus, but we'll find out.
I seem to remember that little brouhaha, if you will. And Jack, can you tell us, based historically on your research, has there ever been a Southern Baptist minister who has had the role of House Chaplain or Senate Chaplain?
At least not in modern history, and particularly evangelical as we would define it in the modern day. You might, in the mid-20th century, some people could potentially qualify, but I don't think anyone in the modern era would fit the same distinctive non-denominational conservative evangelical Christian mold that Tara Bossy would occupy if she were to be named chaplain.
All right, Jack Jenkins with Religion News Service. We appreciate your reporting and spending time with us today.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks for having me.
All right, faith in the middle of the fire. Meet an LAPD chaplain ministering in California's devastating crisis.
Welcome back. As high winds take a reprieve, crews report progress on the two biggest wildfires burning around Los Angeles. The Eaton fire is now 45% contained, while the massive Palisades fire is about 21% contained. With several days of low winds ahead, they're hoping to make more headway and begin letting people return to their neighborhoods to start rebuilding. But Mayor Karen Bass warns the area isn't out of the clear just yet.
CBN's Operation Blessing is on the ground in California, working with other ministries to provide food, bottled water, hygiene kits, and more. And it's not just ministries fostering faith in these hard times.
CBN's Paul Petit rode along with an LA police chaplain to see how God is moving in the devastation.
Pastor Steve Wilburn is a chaplain with the Los Angeles Police Department. Whether it's a destroyed home here in Pacific Palisades or a charred mobile home along the Pacific Coast Highway, he says scenes like this evens the playing.
This is a very affluent area of the West Side. Probably wouldn't have given me the time of day a week ago. Would not have stopped to talk to me or anything. But today, and when this happened, everyone is open for prayer. Can I pray for you? Yes, please.
Steve's job is to minister, comfort, and stand with hurting people. Whether it's an encouraging word, a prayer, or a quick hug, Steve has been driving these streets since last week, seeing desolation at every turn.
This is a perfect example of the randomness of these fires. To my right, as you can see, utter devastation, home completely obliterated like a bomb went off, same to the left and behind me. Yet here, this home looks like it was remained virtually untouched.
People have like survivor's guilt, like I can't believe my house is standing. Why is my house standing? I said, well, can I be the first one that just along with the Lord Jesus and say, thank you, God, for saving my home?
Each person feels the impact during times like these, including the firefighters.
We were on a street the other day, and there was 4 or 5 houses that we were working really hard to save. You know, and you go into the backyard and you see children's toys in the backyard, you know, and how do you not become emotionally attached to that, you know?
Steve carries a piece of paper in his Bible listing the people he's met during his patrols. It's now his prayer list. Next to it, notes to jog his memory, like the homeowner who cried out in her loss.
And she goes, and then I come out of my driveway and you pull up 5 seconds later. And I'm like, well, we're here to pray for you. And because there is a God in heaven that loves you. And she's like, no. I was just saying, God, if you're real, show me that you're real. And we pull up seconds later.
In Los Angeles, Paul Petit, CBN News.
And a beloved dog with 2 unique jobs. Next on Faith Nation.
Get the How to Believe for Healing collection, including a special exclusive teaching from Gordon Robertson.
For whatever reason, deep within my spirit, I prayed, Lord, how about now? Can I rely on you now?
Gordon's personal stories were honest, they were humble, they were incredibly dramatic.
I felt more hopeful about seeing healing within my own life.
When you read the names of God, you're literally talking about his very essence.
Take this opportunity that God is giving you through these teachings and learn about healing miracles.
The best part for me was when we realized that God chose us and he trusts us.
Receive your exclusive video, workbook, and special teaching when you become a CBN partner. Call or go online today. Download the CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.
Well, finally tonight, dogs of all kinds are known for bringing smiles to people's faces, especially therapy dogs.
That's right. And this football playoff season, one fandom is grinning from ear to ear. Cash is a 7-year-old certified therapy dog. But when his family's favorite team is playing, he's also a mascot for the Detroit Lions, donning a mane and jersey to match the team's spirit. The goal is to spread joy. And John, I think he certainly seems to be doing that.
You know,
he brought a smile to both of our faces.
He's pretty convincing as a lion.
Yeah, he's really cute.
Yeah. Good for Cash. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, have a great night.